Hello, Elena.
Hi, Sergey.
How are you doing today?
Okay.
Still guarding the Iron Curtain?
Yes.
But is it possible to open the Checkpoint Charlie for me?
Well, if you're particularly nice,
Okay.
have time for a drink
Yeah, sure.
and a little conversation?
Thank you. Now we're on the same playing field.
Yes. Right. Hi.
And then, for instance, if you have the title as Terrace Talks and then a sub-caption saying conversations about, the Iron Curtain and the not-so-distant past. Terrace Talks works.
I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office.
17. Mai 1983, Washington. Helene von Damm wird auf das Amt des amerikanischen Botschafters in Österreich angelobt. Damals noch dabei Ehemann Nummer 3, der industrielle Byron Leeds und natürlich Präsident Ronald Reagan, an dessen Seite sie den amerikanischen Traum verwirklichte. Von der armen Immigrantin aus dem niederösterreichischen Ulmersfeld zur einflussreichen Personalchefin des Weißen Hauses.
I was drawn to Reagan on one issue. He was the only one that really talked tough on the Russians. And that was enough for me that I said, he's my man.
Your Excellency, Mr. Mayor, Your Excellency, Madam Chair of the Chamber of Deputies, Your Excellency, Madam Chair of the Bundestag, Your Excellency, Mr. Federal Chancellor, Your Excellency, Mr. Ryan, ladies and gentlemen. The fact that I ended up to be a neighbor and now a friend of Elena von Damm is amazing in itself. But even more amazing is that our stories go back decades, even though in the past our paths never crossed and they were just indirectly, in parallel, following each other. Elena was, of course, a very important person in the White House, a personal aide and assistant to President Reagan. My role was much more modest. I was providing interpretation services to the Russian leaders, including President Gorbachev. But eventually, as destiny would have it, I ended up in Vienna, and we became neighbors. This again proves something that's very important to me. They say that a butterfly can flap its wings in somewhere in Asia, and there is an avalanche in the Alps. I find this kind of coincidences in a similar vein, Sometimes, like I said, God rules in mysterious ways, and I attribute this very much to the mysterious hand of destiny. From my professional perspective, I see that there is a lot of misunderstanding, especially when ideology kicks in and the mass media start spreading very compact and easy to understand stories, like Russian interference into the elections. An interesting, easy to understand concept, Russia, the evil empire, interfering into the democratic process.
When I knew the Indian nation, I rode my pony on the reservation in the Oklahoma hills where I was born.
It was love at first sight, but not because he was a movie star and handsome and all that. He was the only one that really let the Soviet Union have it. I mean, it was the evil empire, and of course my ears opened, and I thought, finally, here is an American that really knows the way it is.
Ist immer interessiert, andere Meinungen zu hören. Er ist ein guter Zuhörer. Es kostet vielleicht ein bisschen was, ihn zu überzeugen. Also er ist nicht abgeschlossen, nein, überhaupt nicht. Er hat Ideen und eine Philosophie und da müssen ihn die Leute dann schon überzeugen.
Seit den Kongresswahlen im November, die den gemäßigten Flügel der Republikaner gestärkt und den konservativeren Flügel geschwächt haben, kämpfen in Washington beide Seiten um jeden wichtigen Posten. Und gerade Frau Van Damme habe es verstanden, loyale Reagan-Freunde ins Weiße Haus zu bringen. Die Entscheidung liegt jetzt bei Reagan und sie könnte nicht zuletzt davon abhängen, ob der 71-jährige Präsident in 2 Jahren noch einmal kandidieren will oder nicht. Da jüngste Meinungsumfragen zeigen, dass Reagan besonders bei weiblichen Wählern schlechter abschneidet als noch 1980, könnte eine Frau in der Schlüsselposition des Personalchefs wichtige Sympathiepunkte sammeln. Frau Van Damme selbst schweigt zu allen Spekulationen um ihre Person, macht aber kein Hehl daraus, dass eine Berufung nach Wien ihr zumindest nicht ungelegen käme. Und sie fehlt kaum bei einem wichtigen Anlass, der Österreich betrifft, so wie hier bei der Übergabe eines Lipizaners an Präsident Reagan im November dieses Jahres.
To be quite honest, I didn't even want to come back. It was really Reagan whom I was so close to. He felt my mother had her 80th birthday, and he said, you know, I think that you should go home. You have reached everything, and I think you will regret it the rest of your life if you have this wonderful opportunity and you don't take it. And he offered it 2 times, and the 3rd time I said yes.
Mit einem Blitzlichtgewitter wurde sie wenige Wochen später in Wien empfangen. Die Medien hatten einen neuen Liebling. Einladungen in der US-Residenz waren begehrter als je zuvor. Für einen Händedruck am amerikanischen Unabhängigkeitstag etwa stellten sich auch die Prominenten gerne an. Doch dass ihr Name mehr in den Aderbeifspalten auftauchte als im politischen Teil der Tagespresse, wurde in Washingtoner Diplomatenkreisen mit Stirnrunzeln betrachtet.
Should I bring him a coffee?
Maybe have a cup of coffee? If I deserve it, maybe. You are taking too good care of us. You're always busy in the kitchen.
Yeah, but Lee, I have already cleaned up the kitchen. To be honest, I really have never before met a lot of Russians. Not in the States and not here. But I liked him right from the beginning.
I said from the very beginning that, Helena, it is very important for us to be clear and to say things that we mean, because without that it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to have a conversation when you're not honest about it. Try to understand what I'm saying. I will try to understand what you're saying. And because, you know, I know pretty much both cultures, I will try to explain to you what I understand is happening in Russia and before in the Soviet Union. And I will also try to understand what I don't understand in the Western approach, or what I don't like about the Western approach. And we can talk about this and maybe come to some kind of an understanding.
I think he also helped me a little bit understand certain things that I never really thought through. For instance, why the Russian people support Putin. By and large, they do. I think they felt also humiliated by the downfall of the Soviet Union and all the terrible things that happened afterwards to them, that he gave them back a little bit their pride. And also things were running very well at that time. The oil prices, the gas prices were very high. And so it was a success story under Putin. And I never really thought so much about it. I thought, well, they must rise up because of all the corruption and all the things that are wrong. And Sergei always explained to me, yes, give it time. You know, nothing happens overnight.
Even though we were on the different sides of the ideological divide, because Elena, when she joined Reagan and his camp, she was very much Republican in her beliefs, and she was very much against what then was the Soviet Union, because she believes, and you can ask her about this,
the victors are not always very nice.
Right.
And so to me, the Russians were the bad guys, obviously. And even though I emigrated to the United States and made my citizenship there, it didn't leave me. Back of my mind, the Russians are the bad guys.
She represents the philosophy that was expressed by Ronald Reagan. And I come from the Soviet background because this is where I was brought up. I lived most of my adult life in the Soviet Union. We had many bad things, but we also had pretty many good things. We had good education, good health care. We were living in a kind of a fishbowl, I agree. We were separated from the rest of the world, and that's why when the wall came down, the glass wall in this case, we started swimming with the golden fish started swimming with the sharks, and it was very, very difficult to survive, right? And as we saw what happened in the 1990s. What's the seating arrangement?
Well, since we're informal, wherever you like. I always use the jump seat in case I have to go rush to the kitchen if we need something else.
This is not a White House reception.
Neither a Kremlin one. Servietten here.
Mr. Khrushchev was pursuing his own political agenda when he decided to give the Crimea to Ukraine because he was trying to win the favor of some of the governors in Ukraine, and that's why he presented it as a gift, you know, because at that time it was the Soviet Union, everything was everybody's. It was not like this belongs to Ukraine and this belongs to Russia.
Right.
So there is no legal basis basically for his decision to hand over the Crimea to Ukraine.
Well, it was signed off by all the others.
Never.
Yes, it was.
As far as I know. As far as I know.
It was signed by all
We'll
of
have to
them.
investigate.
Yeah.
The only point I would agree with you on is that there was the so-called Budapest Memorandum, which basically said that Ukraine must remain within the borders as they were after the collapse of the Soviet Union. That could be something to investigate and look into, but I leave it to the historians and the legal people.
But I
That
agree
is
with
true.
you, you can find lots of examples, but we're also trying to hope that as of now, we're all smarter and we don't...
Do stupid things.
Yeah, okay, again.
Like giving away
Cheers.
pieces of land of your own country. Yeah.
I feel very comfortable, and now we've already exchanged keys, so when one of us is not here, we take care of the other place.
Ну кто же на это пойдет?
Who would accept this?
Сумасшедший?
Only mad people.
Сумасшедший, как
Well,
правило, они находятся
mad people normally are where they belong,
во всяком случае,
undergoing treatment.
их я не вижу
At
на
least
руководящих
I don't see them
постах
in management position, leadership position, or at the helm of states. I told the president, we are missing a historic opportunity. Never before our positions have been that close.
Президент, прощаясь, мне сказал,
Saying goodbye, the president said that he was disappointed
и что я с самого
and that
начала
from the very beginning
приехал,
I arrived
задумал, наверное,
and
приехал
thought
с нежеланием подписывать.
I arrived with no desire to sign. An interpreter tries to play things down a little bit, not only in terms of the vocabulary and register, but also in terms of the intensity, because sometimes the talks can get very heated. And one careless word can fan up the emotions, or sometimes even passions. But if you play it safe and take it down a notch or two, then you can actually give the speakers another chance to thresh out their differences. You do not antagonize the counterpart. You try to give them a second chance by playing it down just a little bit. And in order to be able to really sense that there is this chance, you really have to be into both cultures, because this is where the cultural element really comes into play.
Ребята, вам частушки пропоем, мы приволинскую девчонку любого отобьем.
prosperity for all. That's a fair and a reasonable goal, and it can be attained, but it will take courage for you to stay the course. You will experience many growing pains as you shift further into a market economy. These are to be expected. Keep in mind that they're a natural part of the process, and they are necessary too, if you were to take the economic decisions from the hands of a few bureaucrats and put them in the hands of the people.
If these ideas are true, then it is in the interest of the United States to provide real support to Russia's reform. They're going through their most difficult stage. We haven't gone through the lowest point. People are enduring hardships because they don't want to go back to the past. But in the near future, tough decisions will have to be taken and hardships endured related to the liberalization and low prices on the energy. In this context, I fully support to establish a kind of a Security Council for Europe. And I believe that this would be the right step in the interest of the United States as well. Mr. Gorbachev was also a kind of a speaker who spoke more with passion and emotions than constructing linear logical sequences. And that's why interpreting him presented a challenge, especially when he would improvising off the cuff, because then he would really, go off a little bit. And an interpreter could not do it literally, because then it would not make sense at all. So an interpreter had to find a way to get the idea that was behind the emotions and the sentiments he is expressing, and to put it in a way that would make sense.
Die Kräfte der Demokratie und Freiheit scharen sich hinter Gorbatschows Rivalen Boris Jelzin. Am 19. August 1991 rollen Panzer über den Roten Platz. Der lang erwartete Putsch der dogmatischen Kommunisten überrascht Gorbatschow am Schwarzen Meer.
Some people in the inner circle said that now we have to take really drastic actions to stop the country from falling apart. It was already too late. The genie was out of the bottle.
Wird von den Putschisten gefangen gehalten und nimmt dabei dieses Video auf. Die Moskauer Bevölkerung schart sich um Jelzin und um das russische Parlament. Sie bringt die Panzertruppen zum Überlaufen und lässt die Putschisten scheitern. Gorbatschow kehrt unversehrt zurück, aber seine Macht beginnt immer schneller zu schwinden. Die KPDSU wird in der ganzen Sowjetunion verboten. Die einzelnen Teilrepubliken lösen sich von Moskau. Und über dem Kreml weht die russische Trikolore.
Mr. Gorbachev has never been intimidating. I think he is a decent man and a sincere man, if a politician can be sincere all the time.
Had Reagan still be around, they would have even could call, let's together help Gorbachev so we don't lose him, because he's one we can trust. We have seen what happened and we can rely on him, and we help him rebuild from scratch a better place for all the people.
Mr. Gorbachev, I think, did much more by not doing what he was supposed to do. You have to understand that in 1985, he was the most powerful man in the Soviet Union, head of the Politburo. He had the army at his beck and call. He had the Secret Service. But he was gradually letting people kind of go their ways. He was allowing them to talk, to question, to argue. At first people were incredulous that this was happening. But he wasn't doing what he was supposed to, and what the leaders before him were doing, cracking down, taking drastic measures.
Вот поэтому нам нужна совершенно другая федерация. Совершенно другая федерация, где бы этот политический суверенитет, экономическая самостоятельность были гарантированы полностью.
He did just about everything that he was asked for, but then when things collapsed, nobody helped him. Nobody helped him.
The mass media are known to create certain images in our minds that stick there, and then they make it easy to understand many situations, like this Berlin Wall image. It's very emotive, and whenever this image is brought up, you create the whole story in your mind, how the world was divided into two blocks, how people suffered and what was done to bring the wall down. Do you think that we are running the risk of a new wall being built, or it's just a temporary downturn?
They have started already with the wall. I saw yesterday. I saw yesterday on the news a part of it. I could only think back. Reagan, would he still be alive? Perhaps in retirement, he might say today, "Mr. Trump, don't build that wall."
Yeah, that is true.
There is one sign the Soviets can make that would be unmistakable, that would advance dramatically the cause of freedom and peace. General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate.
Berlin, its parliament, and the people of Berlin have bestowed upon Mr. Reagan, Mr. Kohl, and I a great honor, the title of the honorary citizens of the city. I fully understand the significance of this action. It echoes with a profound response in my soul.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Ich bin der Kommandeur des Grenzschutzkommandos Mitte aus Kassel.
Build that wall. 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 Build that wall.
Because walls basically don't help.
Don't solve anything.
Don't solve problems.
Don't solve anything.
It's just putting everything, putting something on a back burner. When you don't want to address a situation, it's easy to build a wall.
I enjoy our encounter, this exchange that you tell me your side and how you perceive it. I have benefited greatly, and it's wonderful to think that we're actually, except for the Krim, we're pretty much on the same note now.
The world of politics is so full of cliches. You know, it's easy to explain it to people when you cast things in black and white with little gray, sometimes thrown in. But life is actually more complicated than that. And many of the things we talk about today and many of the things we discuss, in fact, reveal that there is much more color to life and much more subtlety than would come across from popular beliefs and understandings.